First things first, Tim. How are you?
Very good. It's nice to be on the FaceCulture again.
Good to have you.
3 years goes by quickly.
Well, a lot to talk about then, I suppose. What I want to start with is, I wrote some lines down from songs here and there, and in Radio Kids, there's a line. At least I had that song on the radio.
Yeah.
Did you have a specific song or track in mind when you wrote that?
Well, the track that I talk about in the song was, I was maybe like 13 years old.
Okay.
And there was like a kind of an indie alternative radio station.
Okay.
And I would stay up really late. And it was the Modern Lovers, I'm Straight.
Okay.
So that's why I sang the song, Who's Hippie Johnny?
Right.
So I thought that was like the greatest song I'd ever heard in my life it was just a new world.
Sure.
Because it was just like, as that song kind of is, it's about a lot of things, but it's just about the idea that it was a human telling another human. You know, it was before phones and
Sure.
internet, so it was like, and that's what I do love about the radio, is that it's a person making the decision to play the song, and then that person sends it out kind of into the abyss, and whoever catches it, you know, it could be really special for that.
So in a sense, is Radio Kids somewhat of a nostalgic song to that period where
Yeah, I mean, I play into nostalgia, like you know, especially with Hard Love in general, the record.
Right.
It's like, I guess it's a nostalgic song, but on the other hand, I just kind of wrote a song that I liked. Okay. And it's just kind of like the words fit well within it. And oftentimes when I'm not like, you know, overly, you know, if I'm just doing a song that means something, but I don't necessarily know what it's going to, because a lot of the songs on the record I wrote all the music and didn't have lyrics.
Okay.
I had like the vocal melody written, but so then the lyrics just kind of found their way in.
Okay.
And that was just one that kind of, I actually thought about that line, Hippie Johnny. So I was like, then I just wrote the whole song around just that one little idea.
Have you listened to the track lately?
Yes. Oh, Radio Kids or I listen to Modern Lovers all the time.
Okay, so it's still very good for you?
Oh, it's perfect music. Yeah,
Okay.
It's so good. It never ages.
And from that time, you say you were 13 and staying up late to listen to the radio. What role did music play for you?
I mean, music was, for me at least, I mean, now I'm 34 years old, and I guess I started really loving music at like age 9 or 10. So now that's been 24 years of just every day
Right.
listening to new records and being on that discovery of like, you discover one thing, but it's like the roots of a tree. So if, let's say you find out about the Modern Lovers, but then you see all the bands that came before them that made them what they are, and then you see all of the bands that came after, and there's just always new roads taken from music. And that's what I love about, you know, just navigating through genres, and it's kind of the one, I play music as a band, but my hobby is me,
Sure,
you know, collecting
sure.
vinyl records. So it kind of, my whole day and my whole life revolves around
Right.
music in a lot of ways. So.
Is there then maybe a band or an album you've discovered lately?
Let's think about it. Like a band that I've never heard of. I'm trying to think this year. This year was a strange year for music for me because I didn't listen to a lot of, when I'm recording, I don't listen to a lot of bands. But now what's great is now that it's kind of said and done with my record, I'm going back. So like I'm catching up on a lot of bands. Like I listened to the Preoccupations. They were Viet Cong before, but loved what I heard. I've only listened to it once and it was incredible. But mostly this year I've just been spending all of my money on like dub records from like the 70s and like African psychedelic. I mean, just, yeah.
Where this interest? Where did this interest come from?
Oh, it was actually came from my friends in, I never know how to pronounce it, Utrecht or Utrecht?
Utrecht, yeah.
Utrecht. And they run the Village Coffee. I'm wearing their shirt right now, but I just love them. But we were having this great conversation. I said, "What's the best reggae record ever made?" And the guy was like, "The Congos," you know, and the Congos is like a group that Lee Scratch Perry. So it's like, and that's the thing, the idea of like one little spark can then, because I got that, and I've always loved reggae, but I got a good reggae record. So once you do that, you're like, now I want to discover everything else around it and the whole universe that exists.
So this entire, the way you speak about it, this kind of search and discovery of music and old music, new music. When you start an album, how does this factor into it? Like you say, you don't like to listen to too much while recording? But
yeah, I mean, I don't listen to too much music while I'm recording simply because all I can think about is the song. So like, especially when I'm writing, I'm always going back to like, you know, I'm always just going over the music that I'm making, so it becomes so all-encompassing that I don't have the time. But as far as influences go, it's this residual, amazing, like, it's like this beautiful stew or something that has been, my whole life been brewing, so like, and I never know what's gonna come out. Like when I was making this record, for some reason I was like listening to a lot of, as I said, dub, but I was like, then I got back into like Jane's Addiction.
Okay.
You know, I was listening to them that I hadn't listened to heavily since I was like a teenager, but, you know, and just, but what's great is the way I make music is I can, in my head, I think something sounds like it, but it never actually sounds like,
right.
You know, I'll be writing, I'm like, oh man, this has got like a Augustus Pablo kind of beat, but it's not.
Sure.
Like just in my head, so like I have this like, you know, intention and inspiration, but I think it's probably a good thing because then I would just sound like, I never like bands that just sound like a photocopy of something else, you know, like, and you can tell with great bands how they, like my favorite bands are ones that just take so much in, and it probably shouldn't work, but it does at times, and that's always my hope for when I make records, especially this one.
Well, you mentioned that this record you had all the music done before the lyrics came in, and I wrote down that it is quite a varied record. So where did you start?
I think I started with the title,
as
I did actually with the previous record. I had this thing like, I made in my little computer program, I don't have a studio, but I just have like a, you know, laptop that I do it on, and I had like a beat that I just made on a loop and a few chords, and oftentimes how a lot of these songs were created was I would do that, and then I would like put my headphones on and start moving, like start dancing, start feeling like becoming physical, and then holding the microphone and then just like talking, or then the talking turned into singing, and then the singing turned into kind of like made up words.
Sure.
But oftentimes those made up words were pulling from the subconscious, and then I would record all of that, maybe 20, 30 minutes of just continuous, and then I would go on a walk, and then I would listen to it and then hear things that I would say, and like a lot of the lyrics on the record came out of that, like, and it was, I loved it because I needed to step away from this such an intentional narrative that was so present in Heel, which was super important for me at the time, but now I needed spontaneity. You know,
how come? Why?
I just think it's been done.
Right.
And I said it in a previous interview yesterday, I said, we've heard enough guys with beards be sad. We know they get broken up with, like it's over, like I'm done. Like I have a shelf full of records of, you know, bearded guys, you know, being like, feeling sorry for themselves or being overly serious about something. And I personally in my life needed to just loosen up a lot, and as then did the music with it.
Was that a tough thing to do?
No, it's a great thing to do. I recommend it for everyone. Just, you know, life is very difficult, but it's also joyful. And you take the idea of, I love the idea of joy because joy is not the same thing as happiness.
Sure.
Because happiness is kind of circumstantial and surface, but joy is like the full spectrum of joyful sadness, joyful, like
Sure.
you can feel joy at a funeral if the person lived a great life or something, and or in like the depths of lovemaking, you can feel joy, like all of the.
Right.
And I think that's what this record is. Like, it's not necessarily always happy, but it's strangely celebratory in the.
Well, you mentioned the word celebration, and I wrote this down, a celebration of the limited time we have on this earth. So was that what you wanted to capture?
Yeah, I mean, I said it somewhere probably in the writing stuff when they send out the press releases, but I did make this. The one thing I thought was the best explanation for the record is like. Some things in records that I love are like carved marble statues, like these beautiful Roman sculptures. And I love those records, but this one I just wanted to like build like a big like paper mache phallus and just burn it in the woods and like, because that's how I was feeling, like it doesn't need to be so perfect and precious and precise. This was one that I loved. My favorite parts on this new record are the mistakes.
Okay.
Because I remember the fun.
Sure.
Usually, if you hear like a tambourine dropping, that meant we were having so much fun that like we dropped the tambourine and we just kept it in.
But in that sense, and then this goes then both for being in the studio and then performing live. But is that then different now compared to previous records?
Yeah, I realized that I have these like comfort things that I think like if something kind of works, I have a very difficult time changing it. But I realized very quickly that I needed collaboration because I did not want to make another record where I would play 90% of the instruments and I would just seclude myself in, a studio somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So this one, it was the opposite. I lived in New York for like, Brooklyn for like most of the winter. Okay. And I have so many friends that live there, and like the studio just became this like, this open invitation for oftentimes people would just show up and be like, hey, do this, like scream a little bit on this song, or like, do you want to play bass? And like one of my favorite things about the recording was the producer, Nicholas, oftentimes when you record, you're like in this safe, clean, quiet, like booth or, or the live room. Most of the vocals we did were actually in the mixing place with just friends. Like if you would isolate the vocal tracks, you just hear people talking. And making records, everyone say like, that's totally the wrong, like that's against all the rules. And we're like, it made me sing better just by like being amongst my friends and like, you can hear beers opening, you can hear like, and it just, it kind of reminded me in a way, I feel like the producer had that sense of like, the Exile on Main Street, like the way that like everything should be on the record. Like, especially when it's like rock and roll music, it shouldn't be scrubbed clean and then like, like presented like, it shouldn't be sanitized. It should just be like, this is, if you want it wild, why not do it wild?